Hello YouTube and welcome back to the Crumbs of the Slice of Senpai to another Lost Ark video. This one will be going over card sets. So as you may or may not know, we got two new card sets, one for DPS, one for supports, and their aim was to offer that weird middle ground that was never met by cards. It was either, really basic or really high end. So do these new middle ground card sets aim well, or do they actually aim better? Shocking results. So let's get into it. To see your card sets, you of course press Alt-C, and this is where you get to see all the card sets. So I'm gonna do this to have them all favorited. Don't forget to favorite your cards, very important. There will be a video about that later on. So to start us off, let's look over the support card sets. So there's Field Boss 2, giving us 12% maximum health, boosting your own survivability and your party survivability. Lost Windcliff 30, giving an extra 3.5% holy damage increase to your party. And then now we have You Have a Plan that has 12, 18, and 30 Peace Awakening, giving 0.5, 1, and 1.5 respectively, increase damage to the foe for your party. So, let's look at this from two separate points. A realistic world where you will likely have Field Boss 2 compared to You Have a Plan 12 or 18. And an ideal world where you have this at 30, this is at 30, and Field Boss is just there, doesn't matter the awakening. So the reason for this is because You Have a Plan, and I'll get into this later on. It has 3 rare cards and 2 epic cards, so you can get these from the Challenge Abyss Guardians. You can get 4 of these cards from Lost Merchants. So realistically, you can get it to 12 and 18 pretty easily, and it's already at 16 for me actually, just from Abyssal Dungeons. So yeah, 30 is the unrealistic one, just like Lost Windcliff 30. So Field Boss 2, is it really worth having that extra 0.5 or 1% extra damage for, a sacrifice of survivability? Well, your own survivability is fine because of many reasons. Firstly, you control the tempo of the shielding and the healing. You are the support, you're the source of it all. So you can always shield and heal, and you have pots as emergency, and I almost never ever use my pots as a support. So you're more than fine there. Another thing, you're already hella tanky. As a paladin, you're innately very tanky. You have pretty good health. So you're good there. With Bard and your artist, you are using heavy armor as part of your core engravings. Heavy armor makes you a monster tank, So you're more than fine there. Now for your party survivability, your shielding and your healing is affected by your maximum health. But now let's take shielding, okay? With shielding, realistically, your shield is depleted because of time, not because of damage taken. This happens all the time from what I see. It's in very rare circumstances that probably already killed the person that the shield got depleted, so it doesn't matter that your shield is stronger, With the healing, with Bard and Artist, there's no argument there, in my opinion, because for the most part, you end up overhealing anyways on both of them. This happens more often than not, and the other scenarios where you didn't overheal, it was like just barely enough to get them to barely maximum health, so even then, that's really good. Now with Paladin, that one is a little iffy, because Paladin gives, very slow healing, so as you're healing, they're still taking damage, and so on and so forth. So it ends up that, extra healing is nice on Paladin. But that's really all it is at the end. It's just a little bit nice and just on Paladin. So on Paladin, you can make the argument otherwise. But besides that, it's nicer to have this 0.5 or 1% extra damage. It's not going to be the make it or break it, not even close. But I do believe it is simply nicer to have this extra damage. Now, in an ideal world where you have all of them opened up, the 30 Awakening here, 30 Awakening here, and obviously Field Boss here, with this scenario, Field Boss will just be used for learning and prog parties, simple as that. You Have a Plan versus Lost Windcliff, now it differs. If you have 2 or 3 people that have Light of Salvation, then Lost Windcliff is giving you a better damage boost of 7% and 10.5%. If you only have one person or 0 people with Light of Salvation, then you are only giving a 3.5% or a 0% damage boost. Versus you have a plan that is simply giving a 4.5% damage boost because, again, it's not linked to an attribute. It's not linked to holy damage. It's simply 4.5% damage, 1.5% split across 3 people. So, ideal world, if you have the time, if you have the 500 gold to spare to expend the card deck slot, then you just look at your party and change it accordingly. In a more realistic ideal world, you will just want to have one card set for your support, right? And yeah, I mean, for Brel and for Kakul, Seidon, and even Vika's Hard nowadays, it's very likely that you'll find people with LOS 18 and 30 already. So it's a pretty safe gamble that your Lost Windcliff is giving at least a 3.5% damage buff. If you want to go the extra mile, you can of course You Have a plan. Now for the DPS card sets. Again, we had Lost Windcliff as the beginner one at 12 Peace Awakening, giving you 7% crit rate, and Light of Salvation at 18, giving you a 7% increase in damage, and at 30, giving you another 8, making it 15% increase in damage. And the new card set here is Deep Dive, and it has 12, 18, and 30, giving 4, 8, and 12 respectively additional damage. Additional is very big here, okay? And the reason why that is I'll just open up character profile, press P, bottom right, details, and additional damage is a whole stat on its own. And additional damage is additive to your overall damage output at the very end. When your damage is calculated by the game to be, smacked onto whatever mob you're killing, this is additive at the end. Whereas Light of Salvation is multiplicative, and Lost Windcliff is crit rate, so, crit rate, crit damage, that has its own calculations, a lot of mathematics. And again, which one now is best? Is Lost Windcliff still the simply beginner one? Is Deep Dive 12 the beginner one? Like, what's going on? And to answer all of your questions simultaneously, I've actually prepared a pretty easy to use Excel sheet where I will show you guys here. So this is it. Let's get rid of this update. So I'm going to be linking this in the description below, but it's super easy to use. I'm not getting into the mathematics of it all. Of course, if you're interested, you can come to my Twitch, ask me on Discord, on the comments even, I'll write it down. I could even put in a little bit in the description if people are interested, but I feel like most people aren't interested in the, intricate details of the math. I will also be linking a Reddit post which actually explained Lost Windcliff versus Deep Dive pretty well. So yeah, for the most part though, Yearning gives additional damage. Relic sets, Nightmare gives additional damage, Hallucination is crit rate, Salvation is additional damage, and Entropy is crit rate and crit damage. And Adrenaline is not accounted for in your basic stats, so you need to manually calculate it when you're doing it. So you select everything that applies. So for my Gunslinger, which is the character I'm logged on right now, I have Salvation level 2, I usually play with Yearning level 2, and I have Adrenaline 3 on there. This is her crit rate. Her crit rate's actually 62.4%, but my Gunslinger has a crit synergy that I always apply. So the crit synergy, in its really basic form, it's 10%, but in actuality, I think it's like 11% or something, technically. I don't quite remember the intricate mathematics, but for now, I'm just gonna assume it's a flat 10% crit rate buff, right? So, and I have Keen Blunt, which gives me an additional 50%. You can obviously see everything when you press P and you go to details here. You can get every single stat here. Crit rates right there, crit damage right here, additional damage right here. Make sure, by the way, your crit rate that your cards are off. So I have this card set on, so it's giving me 7% additional crit rate. So, just take off your cards or just remember to exclude it from the calculations, right? And yeah, so you play around with the stats here. This is also the additional damage on my Gunslinger. And these are the final stats, so these are all calculated from the Excel based on all your choices here. And don't forget to select which deep dive that you have. By default, I have it that it selects 12, the weakest one, and Light of Salvation selects also 18, the weakest. So now there's two arguments. Lost Windcliff versus Deep Dive, and LOS versus Deep Dive. So there's a final verdict here, so you can even completely ignore everything I'm about to say right now and just like plug in everything, you get your final verdict and you're done. If you want to understand a little bit of what's going on, I'm calculating it based on the additional damage you need to have for Lost Windcliff to be more useful than Deep Dive. So in this scenario, with my Gunslinger, my additional damage needs to be more than this, which is 76.09% calculated by this very lovely equation here. It needs to be more than this to use Lost Windcliff, which it is. My additional damage is 89.49. So the final verdict is use Lost Windcliff 12. Now, if my deep dive was actually at 30, now that makes a difference. My additional damage now needs to be more than 164%. So simply, Deep Dive 30 is better than Lost Windcliff. So it's really, the difference is Deep Dive 18 better, or is Deep Dive 12 better? Now, things got more interesting when you have Light of Salvation. So let's just put in 18 at first, and let's put in Deep Dive 18 also. So here, it's saying that if my additional damage is more than this, then use Light of Salvation. My additional damage is 89.49, so it's saying use LOS. Now, things are a little bit more different if I put in Deep Dive 30 instead. Now, I'm using Salvation on my Gunslinger, so my additional damage is insanely high. But if it were more than 71.4%, use LOS. Which, let's say I switch the Nightmare, the old Gunslinger build, so my additional damage is way lower now. Now, the verdict is actually to use Deep Dive 30 instead of Light of Salvation 18. And again, remember, this is 12% additional damage, and this is 7% multiplicative damage. But yeah, and then for whoever is wondering, LOS 30 is always gonna beat Deep Dive. So something really important to keep in mind is there are some characters with separate tripods and stuff that you'll need to like manually put into here. So Gunslinger, for instance, has the 10% crit buff technically. Destroyer Rage Hammer has a 15% crit rate, and I believe like 45% crit damage buff because of the Rage Hammer. For instance, Reflux Sork has their crit damage tripods, Igniter has crit damage and crit rate, I believe. There's a lot of things you need to make sure that you add in manually here to the base stats, so don't forget to do that. And last thing I'll say when it comes to this Excel is, you know, LOS converts your damage to holy damage, right? But it's really just Vicus Gate 2 and Gate 3, and I think it's Belshazzar Gate 4. These are the only ones that are weak to holy damage. So when they're weak to holy damage, that's an extra 10% or 15% damage buff, which is multiplicative as well to them. In which case that even LOS 12 is really worth on them, but like, you know, nobody's gonna keep switching their card sets, you know, for specifically Vicus and specifically for Belshazzar Gate 4, you know? So this is taking a more general outlook to calculating the damage. And for the last part of this video, I just want to show you guys a really important website that'll help you. It's called Lost Merchants. I'll link it in the description below. And this is where you get to like track cards, and people put in the merchants that appear randomly throughout like all the different continents, because they sell all these cards that you need. So Neria, Varat, and Rethramus in Thunder in Eudia. There's Mihan in East Lutera. Way obviously in Annika, you should always have this. Bergstorm, Kraus, and Arthetine or whatever. Sion in Shoeshire, Pyre or Pierre or whatever in Yorn. And I believe that's everybody. And yeah, you just set up these settings here by pressing settings, and you just, you know, do whatever you want. I just have it play sound and use in-browser notifications just to notify me if these cards come up. So I just set these all up now. These are for the new DPS set and the new support set. Way obviously is for LOS. So, you know, pick and choose whatever you want. So, yeah. And then for the Abyss dungeon recommendations, so I saved one of these from my weekly run. When you track the cards, you get to see this icon, and it kind of like splits it like this, like it shows the important cards you're tracking at the very top right there. So Splendid Desolate Meadow card pack is the best one if you're looking for the DPS and the support cards. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Leave a like if it was. If you have any questions, leave a comment, join the Discord, link in the description, or come to my Twitch, link also in the description. You can ask me all the questions you need. Me and my community all are very eager to help people whenever they have questions, so don't be shy, you know, go right ahead. And if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot more Lost Ark content coming your way on this channel. And as always, I will be seeing you some other time or on my Twitch. And bye!